stacked up here today, but we got a pretty solid group. 6 sleds, my girlfriend's brother, a couple of her friends. One of them's gonna be riding the Riot, Ben, who I grew up with, Kevin, his buddy, and Josh is in the line for gas. Moving along nicely. Probably gonna get stuck behind people all day, but weather's good and got all day to ride, so.
You wanna ride it? This is actually a 2015 XF 600, so a 137 version of the cross action. I haven't actually ridden one, so that's pretty decent. Solidly compliant. This is an older sled, has quite a few miles on it, so it feels a little bit worn out, but it does a good job. I mean, I'm hanging it pretty well. It's studded, so it's definitely very hooked up. You okay? Oh, really? Sorry. Thanks, man. There you go. It's honestly a very good lead sled because these are kind of, this is a road, so it's pretty icy with sugary snow on it. And between the carbides and the studs, it bites pretty good. But like I said, this is Ben's family's spare sled, so can't expect too much from it.
This one has 2,700 miles on it? Wow.
He only rode it for a year before he got his new one or two.
I have to say the rear suspension feels whooped.
Well, I mean, I can imagine after today the cross destroyed.
Yeah. But other than that, like the studs and the carbides, it hooks up really nice. It's a good lead sled for that reason.
It's nice. I mean, it feels like it sits up super high.
Yours?
Speaking.
You don't think this feels like it sits up high? See, I felt like when I got back on mine, I was up higher.
It feels like a low center of gravity. Like this one, I just feel like.
Oh, I'll give you that. The center of gravity for sure. I meant more just the seating position. So, did you like this?
It's nice.
Yeah. What do you think of the power?
It's probably the best ride I've had in a while.
Really? Yeah. Nice.
All right, Brap Gang, so unfortunately I screwed up and forgot a bunch of extra batteries yet again. Keep doing that this season, but I was able to ride a 2020 Indy XC800. I was able to ride an XF6000, a 2015. I was able to ride a 2016 Pro S600. I rode the Riot, obviously, and I rode my G4. So I figured I would kind of let you guys know my thoughts after riding all those sleds back to back, things I liked, things I didn't. So first up was the Indy XC800. So it's obviously a 2020, the 800 HO Clean Fire. Some things I noticed right off the bat. It was really good to be back on an Axys. Really have grown to love that front suspension. When I owned it, I kind of felt like I had a lot of inside ski lift. Obviously a side effect of owning an Assault, but trying it in a 129 really rails the corners great. Also, the Pro Steer skis on a sled like an Indy XC 129, they really do a good job. Really solid front end bite. You get really good initial turn and maybe a little push like halfway through steering lock, but in general I was really impressed with those skis, especially in this application. Trying the Pro CC skid, it's not the first time I've tried it, but it's the first time I've really had it on camera. Kind of my thoughts going down a bumpier trail. It doesn't really do as well with the kind of stutter bumps and the trail chatter as the R Motion, but it does soak up the big hits really well. I could see it just being a sled that you could absolutely bomb like a molded out trail on. Now the torsion springs were set to 5. Connor likes them on that, and he's a bit heavier than I am, so I do have my backpack on with all my camera gear, so I'm probably not too far off of his weight, but I think if I was able to turn him down like 1, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more. I will say when you're on a short axis, with how tall they are, it kind of almost feels like if you catch an edge, it's going to tip over. I noticed through the moguls it kind of swaps left and right. It doesn't quite keep the straight trajectory like a 137 and a 144 do. It wasn't awful, but it's definitely something different. I haven't really felt that before, so I figured I'd point it out. Funny to be back on the 800 power again. It almost felt like kind of what a 700 would feel like, in my opinion, you know, between the 6 and then the 850 power. It doesn't really have that kind of abrupt takeoff above 50 like an 850 Patriot does, but the power feels really strong, plenty of fun on trails, so it was good to be back on that again. Kind of some things I noticed being on the Riot again, especially after riding all these other sleds. I've really grown to like that G7 Pro Climb ski. It has a pretty deep keel on it, and I have to say, in each application, I'm probably the most impressed with that ski on the Riot. I think it really makes the most of that ski. I was really impressed with the Pro Steer on a 129, and I'm probably the least impressed so far with the Pilot X on my sled. There's obviously some settings you can change, but, you know, with the way that the Riot's set up and with the way that the Indy XC's set up, those skis worked really well on those sleds. I've even tweaked my sled a little bit to try to change things, adjusted the coupler blocks, stuff like that, and I'm still not quite as impressed with the Pilot X ski, so I got to give the Riot skis the win for all the sleds. Ergonomics on the Riot are still not great. I rode the XF6000, and the trail seat is just such a better seat. Being on the Riot, the seat does feel somewhat thick between your legs, not as thick as the Axys seat does, and it's way too soft. Anytime you're not completely centered on that seat, you're going right through the cushion and you're hitting the base of the seat, so that's definitely not something I enjoyed.
I just hate when you're on the edge of it and you like it literally feels like it's like penetrating you.
Oh yeah, like when I'm leaning, the edge of it
you feel the edges
in my crack.
Yeah.
I thought the way that the trail seat on the XF worked was great. It was good to be on that again. Definitely narrows out towards the front, gives you room to move around, has really good support. I really think that should be the seat that's on the Riot, or some variation of that seat. When I first got on the Riot, I thought to myself, this doesn't give up anything compared to my G4 137, but I will say once I rotated onto the XF6000 and tried the slide action in the 137, there is a bit of kind of numbness that comes with that 146-inch sled. It's just so long overall that it feels like what you do doesn't affect it as much. It's not necessarily like the Assault where it causes inside ski lift or pushing. It just feels like it's such a big sled that what you do on it doesn't matter as much. When you're on the 137 version of it, the XF, it really does feel like if you move around, it kind of moves the rear end of the sled. It can bring the inside ski down, that type of thing. Eric, who I had riding the Riot for a lot of the day, had actually said, you know, he wasn't used to it because he's ridden older sleds. He hasn't been on anything newer. And he felt like no matter what he was doing on the Riot, it just didn't really affect it. When he wanted to slide around a corner, he couldn't really put enough body language into the tunnel and the track to get it to slide, that type of thing. So definitely a pretty interesting takeaway and something I definitely noticed myself. Glad to have been able to try a 137 XF because I had owned the 129 slide action on the RR. I've owned the 146 cross action on the Riot, but I hadn't really been on a 137 XF for very long. I demoed a 2018 with iAct, but that was it. As far as the Pro S600, I can't really say much about it. It was a Pro XC sled. I've ridden him before, but he had it super stiff, so I can't really share much of an opinion on it. I will say, riding the 600 Clean Fire again, it's a pretty impressive 600. I had ridden Cat's 6000 C-Tech, and then I rode the 600 Clean Fire. The 600 Clean Fire feels much more peppy. It's an exciting engine. I feel like even though it's a 600, it's kind of always, you know, tugging at the reins, so to speak, whereas the 600 C-Tech, at least with that 2015 clutching in the XF, felt a little lazy. It could kind of cruise very well, but it didn't feel like it had that peppiness down low, and the 600 Clean Fire definitely had that. Clutching with the Skidoo, it's just so abrupt on takeoff. The Riot does have a very noisy clutch because it's that self-adjusting clutch. And then the Polaris just has a good clutch in general, decent engagement, nothing too abrupt. It gets the job done. While we were out, Kevin's rollers and his secondary went, so that's 2 sleds in my group I've seen lose secondary rollers this season, not to mention Shag Boys. So that's a little bit of a kind of a bummer to see that happen so many times. It's only about a $150 fix, but you know, it's not ideal, and part of me wonders if that has to do with the abrupt clutching. Like, is that causing rollers to fail early? So just kind of my opinion overall on the clutching on all the sleds. Overall, I will say, you know, the Axys, like I've always said, is very neutral. I can kind of see now, after switching between so many sleds, why they would take a little bit of height out of the seat and kind of bring the rider a little lower. And also narrowing that seat up. It's a very big difference when you hop on, you know, the XF, the Riot, and the G4, and then you get on the Axys, and those dimples on the side, you really feel them between your legs. So kind of good for Polaris for moving away from that design. I will say on all the sleds, they all had narrower handlebars than my CFR bars that I put on my G4. All the guys that rode my sled said they liked that about my sled. They liked the wide bars. I've always kind of liked the narrow bars. Like I said, I feel like when your bars are wide, when you move out to like slow down some inside ski lift, you're so far out from the sled that it can kind of really throw the sled off, that type of thing. So I've always kind of liked the narrower bar, but everybody else liked the wide bar. So, you know, hopefully that's something I can keep trying out and keep forming an opinion on. Overall, probably broadness of capability, it's hard to overlook how good the R Motion X does a little bit of everything. It can take the big hits really well. I've asked all my buddies what they thought of it on the small trail chatter. They honestly said they thought my sled must be really soft with how it handles the trail chatter. But when you take it down a mogul trail, you're not bottoming out, you're not doing anything like that. So I had a pretty interesting conversation with Kevin about it after the fact. He said, you know, it feels like my sled is so soft, but then it does still take really big hits. And I just think that's how the technology has grown over time. Back in the day, you had to compromise and you had to have a really stiff sled to get through the big stuff, or you had to have a soft sled to be, you know, compliant in more situations. Now I think it's awesome that the R Motion X can kind of do both so well. And that's definitely something that a lot of them saw, all enjoyed the power. So it was cool to be able to compare all three, like I said. And if you guys have any questions down below on what I thought of any specific thing I might have left out, I appreciate you guys watching, and here's the rest of the video.
All right, so I rode Ben's XF 6000 with the slide action. I rode Connor's Indy XC 129-800. I rode Ben's buddy's Switchback Pro S 600. I rode my sleds, both the Riot and the Renegade XRS. So definitely was able to try a lot of different stuff. I might add in towards the end here what my thoughts were on everything, but cool to be able to try all sorts of different skid lengths and different engines and different chassis. So awesome video in my opinion. I was super excited to make it, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see where we go from here.
that's why we gotta get a little head start on you guys. So see you there. Bye guys. Trail 10, here we come. Solid. First time actually riding with the Eagle LEDs at night. Just haven't done much night riding lately. They seem to work pretty good. High beam, low beam. I dig it. Feels like the Polaris.